This is Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate, the podcast where we cover home buying, home selling, home improvement tips and ideas, market trends and developments, and investing in real estate. If you own real estate in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area, or want to own real estate here, then you're in the right place. Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate is hosted by Blake Watson, a real estate agent and investor in Tennessee and Georgia.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate. I'm your host, Blake Watson with Epic Realty. And if you've been wondering what's really happening in the Chattanooga housing market here in the spring of 2026, you're not alone. I've been digging into the latest MLS data with the Greater Chattanooga Realtors, and the latest data is from April of 2026. Today, I'm going to walk you through what I've found, what I'm seeing, what it means, and most importantly, how it affects you, whether you're thinking about buying, selling, or just trying to make sense of the real estate market. And one of the biggest takeaways I'm seeing right now is this simple truth. Not all of Chattanooga is the same market anymore. So let's start with the big picture. Across the entire Chattanooga MLS, we are seeing a clear shift, but not the kind that makes headlines or causes panic, of course. Inventory is up about 21% compared to last year. Year over year, April to April, about 21% more houses are available for sale. That means we've got more homes on the market, and at the same time, the median sales price is up about 3% year to year, sitting at about $340,000. So prices are still rising, just not as fast. As I just said, 3% increase year to year from April to April in the median sales price. That's pretty close to regular inflation. 3% is not an outrageous increase, and yet it's still an increase that is helping you, if you own a home, to gain more equity, and it's an increase that's costing you if you're waiting to buy. Prices are still rising, just not as fast. Days on market have increased by about 24%, which means homes are taking longer to sell, and our absorption rate, which measures how many months it would take for all the current inventory at the current pace to sell, absorption rate has climbed to about 4.35 months. So we always look at the absorption rate to give us a feel of how healthy the market is and how much activity there is in the market. So what does all that mean in plain English? Well, it means the market is cooling off, but it's not crashing. We're moving out of that red-hot seller's market that we saw during the pandemic and the past few years and into something that's much more balanced. It's already been happening, and now we're here. Sellers are facing more competition, buyers have more choices, and homes are not flying off the shelf in a weekend like they used to. But demand is still strong enough to keep prices relatively stable, and that's what a normalization phase looks like. So what you're seeing today is normal. We shouldn't be shocked by any of this. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This is where I want you to lean in a bit, because this is where the opportunities and the risks really start to show up. Not all parts of Chattanooga are behaving the same way. In fact, some areas are still very strong sellers markets, while others have clearly shifted into buyer-friendly territory. Just like the United States is not one real estate market, that there are different pockets throughout the country. Different states have different levels of interest. Some people are leaving some states. Some states are gaining people. Tennessee's one of the gainers. We have a lot of net inbound migration into Tennessee. And you know that cities are different. Some cities are struggling with their real estate sales, or their values are going down. And some cities are seeing boom times. Chattanooga has been very stable through this all as a city, but we have neighborhoods and zip codes within Chattanooga that are very different. So we're going to talk about that. We'll start with one of the standout areas right now, and that's Hixson, zip code 37343. Inventory is up in Hixson by about 32%, so more homes have come on the market since last April. But here's the surprising part. Prices are up over 12% year over year. Now, remember, I told you the Chattanooga market as a whole has about a 3% price increase April to April. But Hixson, in that zip code, prices are up over 12% April to April. That's one of the strongest increases we're seeing anywhere in the Chattanooga MLS. Even though homes are taking a bit longer to sell, the absorption rate is still sitting around 3 months, just a little bit less than that, which tells us demand is still very strong. So Hixson is a great example of a micro market that's still very much a seller's market. If you're a homeowner in Hixson, you're in a strong position right now. Now let's compare that to a different neighborhood, Southside Chattanooga, zip code 37408, where all of the new development with the new stadium, with the Bend, all these things happening down South Broad Street. This is a very different story on the south side from what we just talked about in Hixson. Inventory is up around 17%, which is not extreme, but days on market have jumped by roughly 80%. That's a massive increase. Homes are sitting much longer, and prices have dropped by nearly 9%. Now, remember, this is a large mix of residential homes. There are certainly a lot of standalone homes that are just single-family dwellings, but there are a lot of condos and townhomes in this zip code as well. So on top of that reduction in prices on the south side, we have an absorption rate sitting at over 10 months. That is firmly in buyer's market territory. So if you're a buyer looking for opportunity, Southside Chattanooga is one of those areas where you may have more negotiation power, more inventory to choose from, and sellers who are more willing to make concessions. And then we've got East Brainerd. Let's look at zip code 37421, which is another really interesting case. Inventory there has surged by about 76% April to April, year over year. That's a huge increase in available homes. Prices have dipped slightly. They're down just over 1%. Not a big change. And homes are taking longer to sell. The absorption rate is now just over 5 months in the East Brainerd zip, and that puts us right on the edge of a balanced market, leans just a little towards a buyer's market. So what we're seeing there is a classic example of supply starting to outpace demand, and that's putting some pressure on pricing in the 37421 zip. Ooltewah, zip code 37363. This tells a slightly different story. Inventory is up about 29%, not nearly that increase for East Brainerd, but that's still a very significant increase, and homes are taking longer to sell. Prices are still up nearly 3% in Ooltewah. The absorption rate is around 4.5 months, so this is more of a balanced market. It's not as hot as it once was, but it's still healthy. Buyers have more options. There's more homes coming online, but sellers can still achieve solid prices if they position their homes correctly. Let's talk about East Ridge, zip code 37412, because this one is a bit of a curveball. Inventory is actually down about 5% year to year, which you would normally expect to kind of force some increased prices. But prices have dropped in East Ridge by nearly 9% anyway. Even with the lower inventory, prices have also come down. Days on market are up significantly, and the absorption rate is sitting at around 3.3 months. So what that suggests is that demand has softened there in East Ridge, even without a flood of new inventory. That's something sellers in that area need to be aware of, because the market is not responding the way it might have just a year or two ago. Highland Park and Orchard Knob. These are old neighborhoods, but they have been really seeing a lot of gentrification and just a lot of renewal and interest in these neighborhoods. That's zip code 37404. And it's showing signs of stabilization in Highland Park and Orchard Knob. Inventory is down about 13%. Prices are up over 6% year to year, and the absorption rate has actually improved, dropping from over 5 months to around 4.5 months. Homes are still taking a bit longer to sell, but overall, this area is holding steady and even strengthening in some ways. So Highland Park and Orchard Knob, steady as she goes. Now let's zoom out a little bit and look at the county level beyond the state of Tennessee into northwest Georgia, because this gives us a broader perspective beyond just individual zip codes and neighborhoods. In Catoosa County, inventory is up about 28%. Prices are down slightly by about 2.7%. And here's the interesting part. Days on market have actually decreased in Catoosa County. Homes are selling faster, even with more inventory. That tells us buyers are active there, especially when homes are priced appropriately. Walker County, Georgia, which also borders Catoosa and borders Chattanooga. It's a different story there in Walker County. Inventory is only up about 4%, not so much inventory increase, so not much change. And prices are down slightly, but days on market have increased by nearly 39%. That suggests a bit of a slowdown in demand. Homes are sitting longer, and sellers may need to adjust their expectations in Walker County. So when you step back and look at all of this together, a few major themes really stand out. Number one, the market is rebalancing. We're not in the frenzy of the past few years, but we're also not in a downturn. Number two, inventory is driving a lot of what we're seeing. In areas where inventory has surged, we're seeing more pressure on prices and longer selling times. In areas where inventory is tighter, prices are holding or they're even rising. And number three, and this is the big one, location matters more than ever. It's no longer appropriate to say this is what the Chattanooga market is doing and have that apply across the whole market. That's not the case. The reality is Chattanooga is now a collection of micro markets, each behaving differently based on supply, demand, price point, and buyer activity. And that was just demonstrated in each of the zip codes we covered. I did not talk about a lot of zip codes and neighborhoods in the Chattanooga area. I just pulled some for examples. We didn't even talk about Red Bank or Signal Mountain, Soddy Daisy, St. Elmo, any of those other areas. We didn't even address that. So this is important to know that each of the neighborhoods and zip codes is its own micro market. And it all collectively makes up the Chattanooga MLS, but we've got to drill down into our local zip codes and local neighborhoods to really see what's going on. So what does this mean for you? If you're a seller, pricing and presentation are more important than they've been in years. You can't just throw a number out there and expect multiple offers to be given to you. You need to understand your specific area, your competition, and where the demand really is. If you're in a strong pocket like Hixson, you still have leverage, but you still need to be strategic. If you're in a softer area like Southside or East Ridge, you need to be realistic and proactive with your marketing. If you're a buyer, this is actually a pretty encouraging market to be in. You've got more options, more time to make decisions, and in some areas, real negotiating power. That's something we haven't seen in a while for buyers. But again, it depends on where you're looking. You still need to be pre-qualified. And in some areas, you still need to move quickly and be competitive. At the end of the day, the headline here is simple. Not all of Chattanooga is the same market. And understanding those differences is the key to making a smart real estate decision in 2026. If you've got questions about your specific neighborhood, your home, or your situation, I'd love to help you navigate it. That is what I do as a realtor. And you can reach me, Blake Watson, with Epic Realty, at 423-315-1815. You can visit my website, athomechattanooga.com. That's athomechattanooga.com. Or connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm Blake Watson on both of those platforms. And on Instagram, I'm Rock and Roll Blake. Let me give you my brokerage phone as well. It's 888-893-3537. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate, and I wish you the best on your real estate journey.